Our final story this week, and it's a piece of advertising that caught our eye and impressed us in a universe that is completely cluttered with rubbish and lacking in imagination. It's an organic billboard that will change over time. Where? In Cape Town, of course. And that's where we found Simon Walls from Tractor Outdoor. So, how did the idea germinate? Pun intended.
It's an idea that we've been following for quite some time. There's a French landscape architect by the name of Patrick Blanc, who has been doing very similar projects in France for quite some time, basically taking blank facades and greening them. And obviously with the drive towards more eco-friendly advertising, it was an idea that we had that we tried to actually get the idea and merge this into some kind of traditional outdoor advertising.
Was it a difficult sell to the client?
To be honest with you, it was a bit, but it was a relatively new concept. But fortunately, Emirates and their agency, both Starcom and New Venture, were very open-minded with the idea, and they were quite receptive to it. And I think it did take a bit of toing and froing, but they bought into the idea early on. And it did take quite a while to plan. I mean, it's not something like a traditional billboard where you simply just flight it, print and flight it. It did actually take quite some time to actually, obviously, plan the artwork and plan the design and actually then implement it onto the facade.
We'll talk about the mechanics of maintenance in just a moment, but I would suggest to you that unless you're doing this type of thing with outdoor advertising these days, given the clutter, no one's going to notice anyway.
Yes, I mean, obviously, I mean, the particular nature of out of home, as it were. I mean, that's obviously, as you know, it's billboards, it's transit media, it's advertising in the malls. It's pretty much everywhere. So obviously, it takes a big idea to be able to cut through the clutter, and I think we found that that this particular garden has worked quite successfully in that regard.
Why are there so many bad ideas in out of home? I'd also suggest to you, Simon, that so much of it is just appallingly bad.
I think not a lot of people treat out of home in the context of the environment. A lot of people simply, and creatives are largely to blame for that, where they simply take an advert that's been placed in a magazine and simply thinks that this will be sufficient to put on a billboard on the side of a building. Advertising is important in terms of its context. Particularly outdoor advertising, needs to take the environment into consideration, needs to take the audience into consideration. It's not simply a question of let's take an ad, put it a print ad and put it on a billboard, and that sort of ticks the outdoor advertising box. So I think that is largely the reason why there is so much, I'm not going to say bad outdoor advertising, but just not a lot of thought goes into the process. I think the more ideas or big ideas that people have about a particular environment, a particular creative environment, I think that lends itself to good outdoor.
All right, a lot of thought has gone into this particular execution, but surely it's a very difficult thing to maintain.
To be honest with you, we're actually very fortunate to have a landscape gardener by the name of Nicholas Whitehorn, who assisted us in this regard, and he's been working with me very closely in coming up with the idea and actually finding out what the best way to actually implement the idea was. We've taken a blank facade, which is essentially a 6 metre by 12 metre brick wall, placed a series of marine plywood as a backing system, and then we've imported biodynamic felt that actually is then attached to the board itself and has a series of hydroponic watering irrigation systems running down the facade of the building, and then plugged into that is a fertigator hydroponic system which then drip feeds the plants that are actually attached to the building. So as far as maintenance goes, once it's set up, it pretty much runs itself.
You know, I never thought I'd ask this question, but how do you weed a billboard?
With difficulty, actually. We specifically chose the site given the fact that it's got easy access to the site. It's north-facing as well, because as you know, obviously the southeastern Cape Town it will punish any garden like that, particularly in the early stages. So we had to choose our location very specifically. So obviously, because this was the first that we've done in Cape Town and actually in South Africa, we had to choose the environment that obviously was able to just mean that any tweaks and any maintenance issues can be dealt with quite easily. The nature of this project means we can do it anywhere. We can do it on a standalone billboard. I can do it on all the way up a building if possible. But just for the sake of actually getting it right and actually practicing, as it were, we decided to actually focus primarily on an easy access position. So to answer your question, it's actually not that hard to read a billboard.
I'm presuming this is a fairly expensive execution.
Yes, it is. Initially it is. It's obviously, it deviates quite a far away from the traditional print advertising of just printing on a PVC vinyl and flighting it on a billboard. There is a lot of planning that goes into it. Fortunately, again, our landscaper, Nicholas Whitehorn, he assisted quite well in this regard by providing plants and actually working with us with a fairly cost-effective solution. But I think as time goes on, we've obviously have learnt a lot from this, being the first one, to refine it and obviously reduce the costs going forward.
And very quickly, what sort of feedback have you had?
The feedback's been phenomenal, to be honest with you, Jeremy. What we found very successful about this campaign is that while it was a big idea and it was a nice idea, we got a lot of mileage on the blogs, on Twitter, on Facebook. Pictures were taken, they were tweeted, they were sent around. So in terms of the actual aggregation of the opportunity, the various social media that interacted it actually added a lot of value to the actual client itself and obviously to the media value of the construction.
Yeah, I mean, the secret to anything like this is aggregation, as you say, and convergence as well. Simon Walls, we're going to leave it there. Good idea. We like it. Thanks very much for talking to us. In Cape Town, Simon Walls, Sales and Marketing Director from the Tractor Outdoor Agency. It's a good idea, isn't it? Next week on Mags on Media, what keeps marketers awake at night? And we'll go behind the scenes of this television ad. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.